Welcome back to my channel. I am your favorite mother of three, Bougie Vintage, and today's video is another Face the Facts. Today I am going to be talking about red flags that I ignored in my relationship or while dating that I really shouldn't have ignored. I'm going to start with my Makeup Forever primer. All the products that I'm using will be in the description box. So I think I want to touch on 5 red flags that I ignored that you should probably pay attention to in your own relationships. And this does not just go for romantic relationships, this can go for platonic relationships as well. So I've mentioned that when it came to red flags, I thought they were pink. And so I didn't really pay too much attention to them, but hindsight is always 2020. Unfortunately for me, my hindsight was 2022. So I'm just going to shed some light about some of the red flags that I ignored early on and also throughout the relationship. I know you guys are not ignorant, so you guys are fully aware of what a red flag is. But one of the things that makes red flags so dangerous is the fact that they creep up on you. In one of my last therapy sessions, my therapist was telling me that I need to be more gentle with my younger self and more compassionate towards her, because if you know better, you do better. And so obviously now I know better, so I can do better. But she gave me the analogy of a frog placed in boiling water. And the analogy basically was, if you put a frog in water at a regular temperature and slowly increase the temperature to boiling temperature, the frog is not going to notice that the water is getting hotter until the water is boiling and the frog is essentially dying in the boiling water. And so I had never heard this analogy before, but I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It made a lot of sense to me, and it's really... Why is there so much? Oh, it's garbage day. Hold on. And it really just kind of allowed me to, show my younger self some compassion, because I was looking at my younger self like, girl, you were so stupid. But that's really not the case. Very early on, there were definitely red flags, and I didn't pay attention to them because I was young. They weren't red flags to me at the time. I think one of the first red flags that I witnessed was very early in the relationship. I, at the time, did not want a relationship. I had actually just gotten out of one, and I really wasn't looking for love. So I was minding my business. This person started to befriend me, and I was totally okay with being friends. I've shared this before on my channel, but the relationship, slowly became more than friendship. Now, what was a red flag in this instance was the person was showing me a little bit of emotional immaturity, but we were in our 20s and I didn't really recognize it as such. Not only emotional immaturity, but also a lack of commitment. And a lack of commitment can be in work, it can be in relationship, but what I'm actually referring to is the fact that my ex did not necessarily want to ask me out. He didn't ask me out. He just kind of started claiming me. And I was like, yeah, no. I was like, yeah, no, you need to ask me if I want to be with you. You cannot just tell me that I'm your wife, because that was the terminology that my ex had been using at that time. So very early on in the relationship, that you can look at as a controlling red flag, or a red flag that lets me know that this person may be controlling. But again, I didn't see it as controlling. He had started calling me his wife, and I was like, well, I'm single. I kept saying that, and he would get upset that I was saying that I'm single, but I was saying that because you can't just tell me I'm your wife. What in the world? Especially because I wasn't looking for a relationship. So I would be like, well, I'm a single wife, so it would actually upset him or annoy him that I was saying that, because he's claiming me. But like, baby, I ain't nobody's trophy. You cannot just claim me. You can't just come up in here and Christopher Columbus me. Sir, you better back up. So that to me was a red flag that I kind of ignored. I kind of chalked it off as being cute. Like, oh, it's so cute that he's claiming me but won't ask me out. And then I made that very clear that, you know, you have to ask me. You cannot just say that we're together. No, don't work like that. Not for me, at least. Every time I said it and he's like, fine, I'll ask you, he started to ask me, but then he would be like really immature about it or like giggling about it. And again, I thought he was just being dumb. Like at the time, because we were friends, I didn't really, you know, make a big deal out of it. Slowly but surely, we ended up as an item. So I would say that that was one of the earlier red flags that I was ignoring, emotional immaturity. I didn't know it back then, so I couldn't put a name to it, you know. I'm using one of my favorite palettes of all time, and I'm gonna take the cardinal red color here. Now, looking back at that, I probably still, if I didn't go through everything I went through, I probably wouldn't even be able to look back at that moment or those moments and say like, oh wow, like the signs were always there, because it seems insignificant. But that's the thing about red flags. They do seem insignificant at first. And if you don't know anything about relationships, you cannot pick up on stuff like that. Or if you don't know anything about mental health, you cannot pick up on stuff like that. So I was not picking up on the fact that that was showing emotional immaturity, which I have learned a little bit more about in reading the book Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. That book is such a good read. One of my subscribers had actually commented it, and I ran to Amazon right away and ordered it. After I ordered it and I started to read it, I was like, yeah, wow. And that's how I was able to even come back to this and realize, okay, well, this was showing emotional immaturity from the very beginning of the relationship. The next red flag that I would say that I definitely ignored was if somebody is naturally dishonest. It can show in a lot of different ways, but really you have to look at their line of work or their criminal behavior and activity. Bad boys definitely had me in a chokehold in my younger days. As I got older, it became less and less appealing, especially after having children. And I always used to say that my ex was a reformed gangster, a reformed bad boy, but he really wasn't reformed. He'd made slight adjustments, but I feel like when people are criminally minded, they stay that way forever. They have a very much an F it mentality, which is a red flag in itself. F it is a red flag, okay? If the person that you're with is constantly saying F it, like YOLO for everything and anything, red flag 101. Now, like I said, bad boys had a choke on me, okay? The rebels of the world had a choke on me, a chokehold on me in my younger days. And so I was naturally attracted to bad boys, thugs, criminals. And I really feel like that has to do with where you grow up. It has to do with your environment. Because I lived in Malvern, naturally, I would probably find myself dating somebody that was a little rough around the edges. Now, obviously, there are cultural differences between myself and my ex, right? But because of our environment, our neighborhood, I felt like I could, in a way, relate to my ex for environmental reasons. He kind of fit in, you know? He fit in with me. He liked my mom's cooking, you know, because we were friends first, right? If you recall, I definitely stated that one of the things that was a factor the day that I was going to kind of end things with him before they began was his skin color. It was new to me. I wasn't, you know, I was weirded out by it. So I was gonna end things, but then things took a turn and I didn't end up ending things because I realized, hey, you like this person. You can't just not date them or talk to them because they're Caucasian. But that's how I was feeling at that time, you know? I wasn't fully open to dating outside of my race. I didn't know, like, it just was weird to me. But because he fit in so well, it kind of, in a way, opened my mind up to the idea of it. I keep getting distracted as I'm talking. Basically, the red flag here was the past criminal activity. Me dating men with criminal history was not new. I had always gravitated towards them. That wasn't what the issue was, though. The issue, or the red flag here, was what are the criminal activities that you are involved with? I'm not going to divulge all the man's business, obviously, right now, even though he is pretty open about it. Why I say it's a red flag is because of what type of criminal activity is whoever you're dating involved with. Are they a drug dealer? Because as much as you want to say that that is a dishonest career path, if you're honest about doing it, is it really dishonest? If you are openly dealing, is it dishonest? I wouldn't say so. I would say that, somebody is quote unquote getting it how they live. But that really wasn't the case in my situation. So the next question is, are they stealing and robbing? Because that is a red flag. Now, all criminal activity is dishonest in some way, but to me, theft of any kind is a whole lot more dishonest than, say, drug dealing. I think the reason I didn't take their criminal history into red flag territory initially was because they were honest about the things that they did. They also had a regular job on top of that. They were honest with me about what they've done in their past. But when I look back on it now, I would say that a lot of men that are dating that do involve themselves in questionable activities, I think sometimes they divulge information to make themselves look cool or like more attractive, because like I said, I was in a chokehold with the bad boys. Okay, so I think the criminal activity itself did not attract me, but there was a certain swagger, a certain je ne sais quoi, okay, quality, because on top of all these things, I would have to say my ex is very charming, like Dutty John. Okay, very, very charming, very charming. So it's easy to be led astray, especially for somebody like me that grew up sheltered per se, because church, pastor, daughter, they always say the pastor's kids are the worst. Okay, the pastor's daughters are always in the problematic stuff. I am no exception to that rule, girl. So yeah, that was a red flag that I had initially ignored, because I am very much like the church, come as you are, I don't judge people. At that time in my life, when I'm young and dumb, I know the therapist said to be compassionate, but girl, I was young and dumb. At that time in my life when I was young and dumb, I won't say young and dumb, but naive and also immature myself and not able to identify red flags, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not going to judge somebody for something they did in the past before they even met me. Like, I'm not going to judge somebody for that. So I just, they're telling me that that's what they've done. So why am I going to be mad about that? With that being said, you have to consider that if somebody is or has done things of that nature, would they do it to you? Because I would say another red flag was that somebody that's always looking to make a quick dollar, somebody that wants maximum return on little investment, is a red flag. Definitely a red flag. And I think a lot of people ignore that. And it's hard out here. So you can't even be mad sometimes, because we know it's hard out here, right? Especially if you grew up in the hood. Fast money is always going to be appealing, especially if you're a material girl. Okay, which I very much was, but I'm the type, I like to work. Okay, I like to work. I've been working since you could work. I've been working since before you could work. Since I was 15, I've had a job, but I had always been attracted to niggas with money. And it really didn't bother me how people come by their money when I was younger. Now it does, because it's like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And am I going to be caught in the crossfires of your criminal activity? Am I going to be collateral damage? Like, those are the questions that you would ask yourself if you knew how to identify red flags. If you're not just ignorant, those are valid questions to be concerned with, to ask yourself when dealing with somebody. But if you are freaking ignorant environment, you're not going to be able to even think to ask those questions, because I certainly did not. By the time I realized that these were red flags, girl, the flags didn't burnt up. They was black, okay? The flags burnt. It was way past red at that point. And so I think that was definitely one of the major red flags that I ignored. The type of charges, the jail time. What did he go to jail for? Like, those are things that I didn't consider would affect me in the long run. I'm watching this person grow with me, right? So when it came to criminal activity, I see over the years, obviously, that the criminal activity is not their focus, even though it would, every once in a while, it would definitely creep up and they would want to hit a lick. And I'm like, at what point does that go away? You know, like, you have a job, you have a career, you have a family. Like, are you really going to risk it for the biscuit? You know? And so those were red flags that never went away. If you are with somebody that is never satisfied, like never satisfied, you will never see them. You will never be able to witness them satisfied. And you have to recognize that very early on, that this person is not satisfied with anything. They have a regular income, they have money flowing in, and they still want to do or participate in criminal activity. Like, why? Why would you do that? The money's better, but the risk is higher than the reward. Like, red flag. Red flag, it's not pink, okay? You know I'm back in my bag because I've been cutting my crease like every day this week. Let me get this wing together. Okay, so boom. Major red flags that I was ignoring, because the dishonesty definitely came out in the relationship. Obviously, there was a cheating scandal, you know. Dishonesty, if somebody is dishonest in their line of work, they're gonna be dishonest at home. That's just what it is. So then another red flag, and this is a huge one. I'm gonna do a whole entire spread about this. Was my ex had let me know very early on that he was diagnosed as a child with ADHD. And even through conversations that I had with his mom about how he was as a child and like a baby, those were given as red flags. But again, I didn't take them as red flags. I just didn't. And they were really important later into the relationship, especially at the tail end of the relationship when I finally decided to do my own research. The reason the ADHD diagnosis was a big issue or a big red flag. Nothing is wrong with being diagnosed with ADHD. The red flag in that is how ADHD can affect a relationship if it is untreated. So this was a major red flag. The ADHD was untreated. If your ADHD is going untreated, so if you're not in therapy, if you're not medicated, if you're having a severe case of ADHD, of course, that can pose extremely problematic in your relationship. Now, a lot of the red flags didn't really appear to me as red flags until after I had children. That's when they really started to look like red flags. But like I said, by that time, they was burnt black, okay? The red flags combusted. They really did. The reason that the ADHD, untreated ADHD, is a red flag is because if you are not aware of what ADHD is, and you're in a relationship with somebody that has been diagnosed, you have to do your research. And you have to decide, is this something I'm willing to put up with? I researched it when it was far too late. Like, I researched ADHD at the tail end of my marriage because I didn't realize or recognize. I'm like, what is wrong? You know, this was one of the major issues we were having, especially where parenting was concerned. Again, nothing wrong with having ADHD, because I'm pretty sure I am neurodiverse myself, but I be getting ish done, okay? The reason it's a red flag is because when it goes untreated for too long and you are using different coping mechanisms that don't necessarily work for the people around you, it can become problematic. In this situation in particular, I thought that ADHD was just have trouble keeping your attention, you know? I didn't realize how severe the ADHD was, and I also didn't realize how it could affect. I didn't realize that things like that were even hereditary. I didn't realize that's how it can affect our offspring if one day we decide we're gonna have any, you know? And so this is why I say it's a red flag, because I am seeing the effects of it now in my oldest child. It has equipped me now to be able to deal with whatever issues may arise in my oldest child. I didn't know that at the time that it was going to even go that way. You know, I didn't know that that was a thing. So if you're with somebody and they tell you, hey, I was diagnosed when I was a kid with ADHD, but you think you know what something is, like it could be anything. Hey, I was diagnosed with anything, whatever it is. If somebody says they're diagnosed with something as a child, take your time and research what that means and what that is. Because if I had researched this earlier, I think there would be a lot of things would be different. And I was patient enough as it was, but when I realized how severe ADHD can plague a marriage, which, like I said, it was at the tail end, so it was kind of too late. I was willing to be even more patient, which was crazy because there were so many other issues on top of that really trumped the issues that we were having with the ADHD. But ADHD, adult ADHD, untreated, is highly problematic. 0 out of 10 do not recommend dating anybody with those issues if they are untreated and if they're not actively looking to treat those issues. If I had not been ignorant about what ADHD was, like we've heard about ADHD since we were kids, but do you really know what it is and how it affects people, how it affects people's thinking processes and their brains and blah, blah, blah? Do you really know? Because I don't think you do. And it's something that's not talked about enough. It's something that is not talked about enough. And it's so much information that I literally have to go and do a full spread about it, like a full series about it, and give examples about things that were happening or that I experienced directly. But it was definitely a red flag that I ignored. So you see, with red flags, you're usually made aware of them. Even if they do creep up on you, it's not that I didn't know the ADHD was there. I was fully aware. What I didn't know was what it was and how it affects people's day-to-day, which is very important information when you're dating somebody. It's something that can help you navigate your relationship. And if you research ADHD and you're dealing with somebody that is undiagnosed, they weren't diagnosed as a child, that's a completely different ballgame. So it's like if you research ADHD and you're like, oh my partner does this. Then you go and tell them, hey, I think you should get assessed, blah, blah, blah. If they're open to the treatments, if they're open to it, then that's great. Your relationship can survive probably. But if they're not, girl, run. So one of the red flags was definitely that there was denial. After you reach a certain age and you start to see things that are problematic in your relationship, in your spouse, in your friendship, whatever it is, and you address those things and you suggest that help is needed and somebody is denying that they need help, but everything is going wrong, that's a red flag. This is not necessarily a red flag that I ignored, but it was a red flag that I addressed, and there was no willingness to do the right thing or do what needed to be done. There was a lot of denying and minimizing, like, I don't have a problem. I'm fine. We're fine. Nothing needs to be done. So essentially, I'm being dismissed because when I would say suggest therapy, individual therapy, I was told they don't need it, or they would tell me about their experience with therapy when they were a child. And I'm like, okay, but you're an adult now, so you didn't maybe have a say who your therapist was when you were a child, and the therapist was not equipped to deal with your issues. You have to, grow up and get yourself the help you need. And you're not wrong as a partner to suggest something like that. I think if you really care about somebody, that's what you would do. You would say to them, hey, something's wrong here. I see something's wrong. Maybe you don't want to talk to me about it, and that's completely fine. You should get therapy. But then they're saying no. Right? That's a red flag. If you know that something is wrong and you feel something is wrong and you voice it and they're like, no, 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 that is extremely problematic, especially if the person is doing things that affect you and you're voicing your concerns and they're like, yeah, no, I don't need to do XYZ. That's a red flag. Major red flags that I have to touch on. The first one is childhood trauma. A lot of people don't understand how the body or the brain works when it comes to trauma, when dealing with trauma from one's childhood, one's past, one's present. Whenever the trauma happened is irrelevant. A lot of the time, people get stuck somewhere because of childhood trauma. It stunts their growth if they don't seek help. That's why it's so important for people to seek therapy to deal with those issues. The next thing is a red flag, and you might not recognize it as one, which I didn't, but the red flag here, being raised in a group home. So you might not consider that a red flag at first, but in hindsight, you have to realize that's going to come with a lot of issues. A lot of things happen in the group home the same way a lot of things happen in the shelter. Like when I was in the shelter, I've seen a lot, okay? You see the little boy that was rescued in the wilderness? His eyes, oh my gosh, he was in the cold. Was it in Minnesota? Somewhere cold, Montana? He was in the cold for 2 days, this little white boy, little ginger baby. And he is, I think he's 2 or 3. And he looks like he'd seen some things. He was outside in the cold for 2 days. And like, child, his life is never going to be the same. They're going to have to do a documentary. I need to follow up on him in a few years because what the hell? Their upbringing, their childhood can definitely be a major red flag, especially if they share stories with you about their time there. How does that affect them later in life? Because those things definitely did. And I didn't see it as red flag at first. Matter of fact, I saw it as quite the opposite. I thought that because of the environment that they grew up in, that it would be beneficial to the future. I thought that our values would be aligned, especially where children and parenting were concerned, because why wouldn't you want to give your kids the best experience if you experience something as horrible as a group home? But the reason that I say it's a red flag is because what was the experience? Were they constantly kicked out of different group homes, or were they in one group home and that was it? If you are somebody that's constantly kicked out of your space, what are you doing that is wrong that people don't want to be around you? And do you have any accountability? And so that's why it was a red flag, because I realized there's no accountability there. I realized that my ex's life, nobody held him accountable for anything. So when I would try to hold him accountable, it wasn't going to go over well because they don't know what accountability is. Everything is everybody else's fault except for their own. So this played a major role. And this is also a big red flag if they are or were constantly removed from their home and the group home, etc., etc., etc. Another red flag is, have they learned from their behavior? And if you're witnessing things happening over and over again and it's going in, a circle, likely that they have not learned. And depending on their age, they may not be capable of learning or have no desire to learn. That's really where the red flag or red flags come into play. Anybody that's not willing to make necessary changes is a walking red flag, especially if there's people in their corner rooting for them and trying to assist them get to where they need to be on every level, and they're not biting the bait, so to speak. That's a red flag. I am going to go put my wig on. I'm gonna put my lashes on. We're gonna come back and finish my makeup, and we're gonna talk about the biggest red flag ever.com. It's super important. It's the thing that really would have changed the trajectory of my life had I not ignored this one. But here we are. Okay, so this next red flag to me is one of the biggest indicators about what your future with someone could possibly look like. This red flag is their relationship that your partner has with their mother or their family. And actually, not even just their mom, but their father as well. I'll tell you why this is a red flag. If your partner has an unhealthy relationship with their parents, it's a good indicator on what the dynamic between yourself and your partner might end up looking like if these issues go unresolved. Now, the reason why the relationship between a man and his mother is super duper important to pay attention to is because however a man treats his mother, that is how you are going to be treated in the end. Initially, I did not think that he would ever treat me the way that I saw him treat his mom, because I know what kind of person I am. And I had had my own experiences with his mother, and I understood why he treated her the way he treated her. They are very similar, but I didn't realize how similar they were at first. There had been several instances or several incidents with his mother in my own experiences. And so when I saw their dynamic, automatically I felt like, okay, the way he treats her is warranted in a sense. I understood why their relationship was problematic, why it was unhealthy. And he had shared with me, obviously, throughout our relationship, different things that happened in his childhood, in his adult life or teenage life. And remember, he is a Crown ward. So essentially, his mom had signed him over to the government for whatever reason. When I put myself in her shoes and I'm dealing with my own children, I can't wrap my head around it, but that's not for us to judge. The issues that stemmed from the parenting later play a role in not only your relationship, but if you have children with somebody that has been technically abandoned, you're going to see a lot of red flags there that you didn't pick up before because maybe you didn't have kids before, or they just weren't presenting red at the time. They might have been yellow. They might have been pink. And so in the beginning, I was not treated like he treated his mom. If there's unresolved trauma there, if there's unresolved issues, if both parties, if the mother and the son or the daughter and the father, whoever is the dynamic is between, if there are unresolved issues there, if there are issues with forgiveness there, if there is just simple things that are missing from a relationship that is a parent-child relationship, those things will eventually present themselves in a marriage, in a relationship, sometimes even in a friendship. How people deal with other human beings, how people interact with other human beings has a lot to do with their upbringing, what their home life looked like, their communication styles, their emotional behaviors, their responses to things. Those are all things that have to deal with or have to do with their upbringing. So if there was a lack there, it's going to come out. It may get suppressed for a long time. Like for me, that's what happened. It was suppressed. It was coped with for a long time till eventually the lines were blurred and my ex could not see me as myself. He only saw me and dealt with me as though I was his mother. And that was very, very not only heartbreaking and hurtful, but complicated for me to understand until I started to read this book. Well, actually before I started to read the book, but I understood what was happening while I was in it, where this dynamic was concerned, but only when I read the book that I mentioned earlier, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, only then did I really see somebody else experiencing the same things. So if somebody has relationship issues with their parent, how they communicate, if they can't let go, if they can't forgive their parents for whatever their parents did to them or didn't do for them, they're going to start to take it out on you in a way, especially if the dynamic shifts between you to where you feel as the partner that your person is irresponsible in any way and you try to encourage them to not be irresponsible. They start to take you on as though you are trying to parent them when that's not really what it is. And that happens a lot in the ADHD side of the relationships. If you research the ADHD marriage, that's really a big part of what happens. Because the person with ADHD is not being treated, it starts to feel, for the person that doesn't have ADHD, that they are raising an adult. And you don't realize the dynamic is that way until you see, like, well, I have a fourth child, I have a fifth child, I have 3 toddlers, and I'm also raising another person's child because they don't seem to have the capacity to be an adult alongside of me. So it feels like I'm raising them, and then they're upset with me because I'm dealing with them like they're a child, right? But that was never the intent behind it, or behind my behaviors. That was never the intent. So if you see that somebody talks bad about their mom, if you see somebody hates their mom, if you hear somebody verbalize that they hate their parent, or that they can't stand them, blah, 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 just put yourself in the parent's shoe and realize in the end, it's going to be you that they hate. It's going to be you that they can't identify between the two. And it's never going to be fair to the person on the receiving end of the backlash. So that was me. I'm on the receiving end of somebody that had no proper upbringing, does not have proper communication skills, does not have the proper nurturing that normal people get. Our home dynamics are completely different because, yes, I have issues with my father, but I have also the ability to forgive. Now, I forgive my father. I don't hold things against him, but I don't hate him. Like, I don't know how to explain it to you. So even if I decide I don't want a relationship with this person because I feel as though they are also emotionally immature and cannot give me what I need as an adult, as a person, as a human in my relationship with my father, then I'm going to keep my distance. I will love you from a distance, and that's okay. And people need to understand that. And the same goes for men with their mothers. You have to do the work to heal those things so that it's not coming out in your marriage, your relationship, whatever the case may be. Because when I was identifying red flags that did remind me of my father, I was vocal about it, and I said something about it, and I made it known, like, hey, he used to do that, it bothers me, maybe not do that. A normal person's reaction to that would be, oh my, I know that that's something that bothers her, so maybe I will try to not do that because I love this person and I want her to be comfortable around me. And she's also not asking too much, but that's not how it was ever received. So if I did approach something and I did say something like that, just to make you aware, just to make him aware, they took offense to it instead of doing what they needed to do. Change that. Who the hell's calling you from Halifax, girl? Instead of addressing the issue, they take offense to it and then held it against me and is begrudging me and starting to treat me in volatile ways because of maybe being critiqued as a child from their parent, and it's unhealed. They don't have any accountability. So if somebody says something that they don't like, instead they're going to flip it and attack you or hold on to it and wait to freaking be a viper and snap at you because they're mad at that when they didn't say that in the beginning. Like, hey, you offended me with that, instead of asking for clarity. And so it's stuff like that that really show as red flags. Does the person that you're communicating with take what you say as constructive, or do they take it and use it against you somehow because it offended them, but they never spoke up and said, hey, that offended me. Can you clarify what you mean? Even if you say it clear as day, that was another big red flag. There would be times where I would say things and they would get paraphrased into what I didn't say. And I said, no. That is something completely different than what I said. Like if I said, hey, can you pick up your banana peel from off of the counter instead of leaving it there every day? If I say it like that, hey, Can you stop leaving your banana peel on the counter? I don't like it. Because I don't need to sugarcoat what I'm saying. There's no reason for that. It's a very simple thing. So I'm giving you a real life example. Hey, can you not leave your banana peel on the counter? The issue doesn't get addressed. The banana peel is left on the counter. And then when I bring it up again, I'm yelled at. This is after bringing it up many times. Hey, can you not do that? Why wouldn't you why would you eat a banana and instead of putting the banana peel, you ate the banana in the kitchen. Why wouldn't you put the banana peel in the food bin that is in the kitchen? Or even in the regular garbage? I don't even care which garbage you put it in. Just don't leave it on the counter for somebody else to pick up after you, you know? It gets left a million times. I address it 999,000 times. After addressing it so many times and there's no change there, then I'm being looked at as the problematic one. That makes no sense. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. But this is how somebody that has no accountability's brain is working. You know, they will find or use it against you, tell you that you're nagging them when they haven't fixed the issue. And so that is a red flag in itself. And so if I say, hey, can you not leave your banana peel on the counter? The way that he will hear it is, you effing slob. Like, this is how it's translated in the head. If I literally, this has happened on many occasions, and there's been witnesses there that have had to interject and be like, why are you responding that way? So, because all they hear or see is their mother and not me. And it's like, that's not fair on my own person. I asked you nicely, but they have it translated in their head as, you effing slob, pick up your effing banana peel. You keep leaving it on the effing counter every effing day, and I'm gonna whip it at your face the next time you leave it there. So that's what they hear in their head when I say, can you not leave your banana peel? I've already addressed it. You know? If I say it just like that, hey, I already asked you not to leave your banana peel there. Can you please just work a little harder to put it, just throw it in the food bin? You know? They hear it with all those curse words in it, and then they yell at you. And they start to treat you like the person that they hate. Do you know what time it is? Jesus! That was a major red flag. I will touch on that in another video. I have to go and do the Bougie Village Zoom call right now, so I got to go. But the relationship between a man and his mom, the relationship between a girl and her father, is going to tell you everything you need to know about your romantic relationship if the issues that they have are unresolved. So, that being said, I hope this video was informative for you. This was another episode of Face the Facts, which is the new Botox. I will see you guys in the next one. Love you.